Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be discussing Unity and how you can introduce Unity and also develop those skills in your code club or in your dojo. We're going to be discussing what is Unity, just to give you a brief overview for anyone who's new to Unity, what it is. We'll also highlight how you can introduce it in your club and our introductory path that will guide you through that. We'll be walking through our more Unity pathway. This is our second pathway to move on from that introductory path to develop young people's skills even further with Unity. We'll also be talking a little bit about some of the common challenges for learners in clubs. We'll touch on those as well as tips and guidance for you to overcome them. And then we'll wrap up by sharing some of the alternative approaches, including our Blender projects for how you can use those to go from Blender to Unity, as well as the next steps for going beyond the more Unity pathway. So lots to cover today, and I can't wait to see all the questions. I see we have Andy joining from Brighton, we have Jared from Ireland, and we have lots of other community members. I can see Amy and Catherine, Kira, Danny, we have Elizabeth, Dave, Fabrizio, lots of people, Manuel, Jose, Michelle, Peter, welcome everyone to the call. And there's lots more there. I won't go into everyone who's joining, but great to see you here and welcome everyone. So now I'll hand it over to the very capable hands of Mac to introduce you to Unity.
Amazing, thank you, Neela. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone joining today. I'm really excited to tell you about Unity. It's a piece of software quite close to my heart, to be honest. And so you'll notice as we go through the webinar that I could talk about it for hours and hours. So I'm going to try and give lots of gaps for your questions. So if anything I say kind of prompts something in you, you want me to expand on it further, please put that into the questions, and then there'll be lots of pauses throughout the presentation for us to answer those questions and kind of really have a chat. I really want to help you guys introduce this to your club and your dojos. So yeah, there'll be lots of pauses. As I say, so I'll start with what is Unity. We're all here to talk about it. It's a games and 3D experience engine and editor. So you can make kind of 3D games, but also there's a big push to think about it more as 3D experiences, right? So like visual novels, toys, interactive experiences. So it's not just for the people that want to make the next Call of Duty, although it would be great for that. It's also for people who want to engage in storytelling. Maybe they're into 3D modeling. Unity is super duper popular, and it's actually starting to be used to make loads of games that your learners will definitely recognize, such as Among Us, which kind of swept the world by storm during the pandemic, Pokemon Go, which was like a bit earlier, and loads of other games. So I think learners will already be familiar with the Unity logo, because every game that's made with Unity starts with a little splash screen that says made with Unity. So it's something that kids should be familiar with and will probably have some interest in. So we wanted to make some learning resources so that they could kind of get on that path. Unity uses a combination of graphical configuration and C# scripting. You can also script in JavaScript. So there's lots of stuff you can do just with clicks and changing variables using your keyboard. But to really unlock the full power of it, we can use C# and JavaScript to kind of code our experiences and our games. And one of the most exciting parts about Unity is that it's one piece of software to develop for many different destinations. So you can make games for mobile, you can make games for PC or Mac, and also many of the major consoles as well, including PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. So lots of possibilities for your learners to kind of distribute their games and kind of engage with something that maybe they already have. So I wanted to answer kind of a big question right at the top of the presentation here, which is, who is Unity for? Who should we be encouraging onto Unity? And so I want to kind of start with this, that Unity is quite a high level software package. So I put it in a similar category as Photoshop. So it can be quite an overwhelming interface. It's quite powerful. It's designed to be used by professionals as well as people that are just starting out. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not as sort of beginner friendly as something like Scratch or maybe the Mu editor that people might be used to using. So in order to use Unity, we want learners to be comfortable with things like using a mouse and keyboard, using shortcuts on their keyboard. Typing will be quite important when it comes to C#. It's a bit more complicated than something like Python, but it's nothing that's unachievable, but being confident is really important. And also there's lots of file management around Unity, right? Importing and exporting things and moving files around. So I think it's important for learners to be comfortable with those things before going on to Unity. Otherwise, it might just be a bit of an overwhelming experience. We don't want to put them off, right? It's a really good follow-on from tools like Pygame. So if they're using Python, they've created some games in Pygame. There's lots of concepts from that they can transfer over to Unity, such as game loops, such as doing things on start, and positioning things. Although Pygame is 2D, Unity uses a very similar system just for 3D. Scratch is, I had a look at your registration questions that you asked sort of to be covered, and a lot of people sort of mentioned Scratch as a stepping stone on the way to Unity, which I think is a good point. Like Scratch is really great for making games and experiences and visual novels and stuff, but I would always recommend that learners do Python first. Now, I don't want to say that you absolutely can't go from Scratch to Unity. You know your learners better than I do, but as a general rule, I would say it's good to go onto Python first, and then Unity can be a stepping stone after that, because Python will help them gain those comfortable in typing and using keyboard and stuff. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, please put them in the chat. But I just wanted to answer that right from the top. So I think if you have learners that are comfortable and are excited about games, then absolutely Unity is a great step for them. And the Intro to Unity path is a great first stepping stone on that journey. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Intro to Unity path. There's been some webinars, I believe, before on Intro to Unity. So there are watch back links and stuff for those. So you can go back and watch if you want a more in-depth look at this path. But I think it's a good thing to kind of cover again. So the Intro to Unity pathway, as all our pathways do, follow the 3-2-1 make format. So they do 3 explore projects, 2 design projects, and then a final invent. And the idea is that we sort of build up their skills to explore and design, and then in invent, we sort of let them loose to create something that they are really wanting to make. So the scaffolding decreases. I'm sure you guys are already familiar with this, but just in case anybody wasn't, I wanted to mention it. So it starts off with 3 projects: Explorer 3D World, Star Collector, and non-player characters. So that builds up a basic game, shows them how the editor works. Then we have World Builder and Quest Seeker. That is combining those skills in some interesting ways to, again, build up to make a game. And then 3D Adventure allows them to either carry on one of those games or create something new. So let's have a quick little run through of the skills that were covered in Intro to Unity. If my keyboard decides to play ball, there we go. So the skills we kind of covered in Intro to Unity, the idea here is we want to give them a gentle introduction to this, what can be a confusing piece of software, but with the right sort of guidance and projects, anybody can really get along with it. So we start off with a lot of using the editor, dragging stuff around, as you can see this animation. Then we move on to things like character controllers. So this is a basic raccoon that you kind of follow around and your camera follows you. So this should look like a lot of the games that people are playing. We then add on to that, right? So once we've got placing stuff, we introduce things like text and particle effects to make it look even more gamey, right? So we have some sort of score and timers up in the top here, and we've got little particle effects, which are those little sort of bright pieces of dust you can see coming off of the stars. And we also start talking about how objects interact. So we have colliders, which monitors when things cross over. And then we teach them how to kind of enable and disable game objects, which is what we call anything inside of a game or inside of a project in Unity is called a game object. So you can see when the raccoon runs into the star, it disappears, and that's through enabling and disabling. Then we go on to the design projects where they're kind of let loose and allowed to kind of unleash their creativity so they can make sort of bigger worlds with their own themes. So you can see we've got a snow world here and a maze world down the bottom. We've got trees that can all make it look super pretty and combine the things that they've learned so far. Then we go on to even bigger projects. So now they're going to use that stuff like text and interactions, so collisions, right? And kind of build up a full 3D adventure. So this is a really great start in Unity. We kind of gently introduce them to the editor. We focus them in on which bits they need to be paying attention to so that it's not overwhelming. It's not like opening up Photoshop when you just want to crop out a background and thinking, what do I need to do? We really gently sort of encourage them and show them which bits to focus on at any particular time. So just a note on the format of Intro to Unity. So I've mentioned it a little bit already, so I'll be quick, but the Explore projects are 3 projects to build a single game, right? So we build up over time, giving them a chance to get comfortable with the editor. Then in Design, they do the same thing again, 2 projects to build up to 1 game. Again, this just gives them time to work on stuff. They're not having to come up with these new big ideas every single time. And they can save any big ideas they have for the Invent project, where they can then continue either of the games they made for Explore or Design, or create something brand new when their creativity has been sparked and they just think, oh, this would be a great thing to make. So it's sort of, you can see everything in the design of that path is designed to sort of get them into Unity and feeling comfortable and making something that they think is really, really cool. Cool, so that was my sort of brief run over of Intro to Unity. I don't know if any questions have popped up in the meantime. I thought it was good to take a break and have a little bit of interaction. So yeah, I don't know.
So we're still waiting on.
How are we looking?
We're still waiting on questions. If anyone does have questions, pop them into the questions box and we'll collate them as we go through. But I had a quick question while we wait for people to do that, Mac, which was what different kind of choices or creative elements can kids add to these projects as they're kind of working through to make their finished game?
Amazing, right? So yeah, you can see the sort of difference, I think, between these animations here and the ones from the first game, right? So this is very much about just getting things in the level, placing them, and then when we move on to the kind of creative side, we show them how to make things different colors, how to put what we call textures in Unity, which are the images you see on like the snow floor to create that sort of icebergy effect, or on the brick walls to kind of give that's called a texture. So we've given them a bunch of assets, as they're called, like things they can use in their game, so they can kind of really try to design things around a theme. So yeah, they can make it look how they want, and they can add sort of pictures and stuff to really bring it to life.
That's awesome. I really love the snow game. I think it's really fabulous.
I know the snowman as well is amazing, isn't it? With the sort of made out of the simple shapes, which are just like spheres stacked on top of each other. Really, really clever.
We have a couple of questions. Sorry, Neil, I think you were just about to say these. I think we had one from Amy who asked, what kind of spec for a PC would you need to be able to run Unity successfully? So what are the requirements, I suppose?
So if you look on the Unity minimum requirements, you get quite a lot of sort of really finicky technical requirements. So I'd say in general, you need a relatively new laptop. I think anything within the last sort of 4 years will be fine. Ideally, 8 GB of RAM. I think 4 would be fine, but it's just going to take a bit longer for compiling. And if you're just making simple games like the ones we're making here, onboard graphics on this sort of newer laptop should be okay. But obviously, if you want to make some full-fledged sort of, Fortnite, Among Us level game, you're gonna need a dedicated graphics card. But I actually found a link just before this recording, because I thought this question would come up, that I can share with you guys, so you can read through it. It's from a separate website, but I think they do a really good job of breaking it down. But just remember that your kids are making very simple games, so they only need the bottom end of the requirements they're talking about. So yeah, I'll get that link shared with you, but I think 8 GB of RAM, onboard graphics should be fine for these simple games, and just a relatively newer PC. Don't try and run it on, a 10-year-old PC that is slow on some other applications. But yeah, absolutely get hold of us if you have any questions about that sort of stuff, if you have a particular laptop that you want to check over. Hopefully that's helpful, Amy.
Yes, I seen there was another question as well from Valeria, just will the slides and projects be shared? And yes, the slides and all the links will be shared. In fact, in the handout section, you should see a PDF handout that you can download, and then you'll be able to check out all the links that we've mentioned after the call as well.
Absolutely, and included in there is really great getting started with Unity guide, which will help you. It's just a single standalone project, which will help you kind of get set up and stuff. Yeah.
Brilliant. I spotted one question from Marcus that I was just going to jump in on, which was what ages are appropriate for Unity and experience and understanding? So obviously, Mac, you talked a bit about how this is quite a good jumping off point if you've done a bit of Python and things like that. Is there any particular feelings on age, or is it kind of open to all?
So I would say probably as a general rule, again, like I always hate to do these things because I've known 7-year-olds that were, you know, very, very competent and confident. But I say as a general rule, you're looking towards the sort of top end of Code Club age, so 11 and up probably, for the intro to Unity. And yeah, I'd say like 11 and up will probably need some support and just maybe a bit more time to get through the projects. I think they are really designed to kind of take a beginner through it. So if I had to put like a precise number on it, but again, I think like it's about how comfortable they are using the keyboard, understanding that they only need to concentrate on one part of a window at one time, and also sort of file management. So yeah, I'd say 11, but you can have younger kids if they're really, really confident and maybe use some 3D modeling software or something. They'll be sort of used to a similar editor.
Fab. I know we're going to have to move on soon, but I reckon one last question.
No, it's okay. I can always speed up the next bits. You know,
okay.
I think the questions are really important, so no problem at all.
Fabulous. We've got a question here from, I think it's Nefertiti, who says, oh, I've lost her question. There it is. Are there any web platforms to utilize Unity?
No, not currently, not that we have access to. I think there is, I've heard talks of them doing something similar. In the future, they're aware that this sort of download requirement and laptop requirement can be a bit of a barrier to entry to lots of people. So I think it is something that they are actively considering. So at the moment, no, but keep your eyes peeled because I do think that something will be coming just around the corner.
Oh, exciting. Very exciting.
I know.
And we've also got one question. How does Unity help when things don't go to plan for debugging and figuring out issues? Does it make it easy for debugging? I guess that also speaks to the projects themselves, Mac. Yeah,
so we add debug tips with every step, as you've probably seen with our projects. We try to kind of anticipate common errors. I'll do a little bit on debugging when we get to the common challenges, so I don't want to kind of repeat myself, but it is really good for giving you like precise errors, and they'll sort of compile in the editor and will say, you know, this one needs to be fixed. So I think after a little bit of experience and knowing that the big red exclamation mark isn't super scary, often it will just be things like in Python, right, missing a bracket. Not capitalization is really, really important. So that's like quite a common one as well. But yeah, it's really helpful. And they don't just do big red text, like they kind of give you precise line numbers. You can click it, it'll take you to exactly where the problem is.
Brilliant. Is that the last question for now? Is there any more that you've seen, Nuala?
No, I think we can jump into a few later on, Mac, if you want to.
Yeah, great. Sounds good.
Brilliant.
Right, shall we go through? We'll move on to more Unity then, and then we'll stop again for some more questions. These are great, though. Thank you. Keep them coming. Oh, sorry, my keyboard always decides to go to sleep. Cool. So we had that first path, but we were very aware that there were some threads that we had kind of left hanging at the end of that first path. So we had done a little bit of interacting with objects in code with the enabling and disabling and having the collisions and triggers and stuff. But we knew there was more we could do to show how you can really play with every component in Unity and code. There's also a big part of Unity, which is about simulation, right? So there's a physics engine inside of Unity. There's full sound simulation, right? So you can get distance and everything inside of there. So we knew there was those things that we hadn't touched on. And also the first path was very game focused. And we knew that there was a sort of wider appeal to Unity that was beyond just games. But I think having something reliable was a great choice for that first path, or something relatable, sorry, for that first path. But we knew that there was more that we could explore. And also there was some kind of fundamental bigger project skills that we wanted to impart, right? So abstracted code instead of just writing specific scripts, writing sort of abstracted components that you can then use across your game, your experiences. Different controls, so instead of just using the arrow keys, you can choose any keyboard keys, and also a bit more in the materials and aesthetics. How do you control that yourself? So we knew there were these threads going, and so we knew we needed to do a little bit more, which is where the more Unity path came in. So again, 3, 2, 1, make, following that same format that you're all familiar with, and your learners hopefully are too. We have 3 explore projects: Rainbow Run, Disco Dance Floor, and Don't Fall Through. Those are some different versions of marble experiences. So they are 3 different examples to show learners what they can do. We then have pixel art reveal and track designer, which allows them to combine them and get a bit creative with the things that we've shown them. And then finally, as always, we have our big invent project at the end, and we call this one Marble Mayhem. So let's have a look at those in a bit more detail. So before I go on, I just wanted to point out the star of the show. So you'll notice that all of these projects are marble-based experiences. And the reason we did that was because it allowed us to use a rigid body, which is the component inside of Unity that controls that physics simulation I was telling you about. Well, it doesn't control it, it allows an object to be sort of affected by the in-game physics. So we've got our bouncy ball, and you can see the little sort of green outline around it. That's the rigid body. So that's the sort of mesh of what's going to be affected by physics. And then you can see the screenshot of the component here. So we can control things like mass and drag. So that's how quickly something slows down. And then angular drag is how quickly it stops rotating. We can decide whether it's going to be affected by gravity or not. Is kinematic is just a fancy way of saying, is it controlled by code or is it controlled by the simulator? And lots of other things. We can control how the physics affects a particular object. So we wanted to show them how this works. So I'm going to say rigid body probably quite a lot throughout as I'm talking about through the next games. But this is what I mean, is the thing that allows an object to be affected by in-game physics. With each of these, I'm going to show you a playable, which you will get links to at the end, and you can play around as well. And yeah, so I'll talk them through and then I'll show you them. So first one, as I said, is a physics simulation. So we create a track and then we roll a ball down it, and we use physics materials which change the way objects interact. So you can see as the ball fell on the ramp there, it had a bit of a bounce. That's all controlled through physics materials. So we can say how bouncy we want certain things to be, or how slick, how much friction we want them to apply. Sweet. Right. So yeah, this is the first one. So we got mouse controls here, and then we can use WASD to sort of add more force to our ball. But if I just sort of leave it, you'll see that the ball will just sort of roll down, pulled by physics. And then we've got some spinning objects here, and we can kind of add loads of fast force to it. And then we also create this reset button, which puts your ball back up at the top of the ramp. And you can see that these sort of capsules here have a bit of a bounce to them as well. So this is a really gentle introduction, just a little physics simulation, but I think really good fun, and they can make this look however they want. Next one, this one is one of my favorites, to be honest, and I think will be an absolute hoot when you're doing it in a club or a dojo. So this is called Disco Dance Floor. So this is more of like an interactive toy, I would say. So we create a dance floor that you can tilt using the controls, using WASD. By the way, all the playables use WASD as their controls. So you can tilt it using WASD, and as the disco ball rolls around, it changes the color of the tiles underneath it, and it also produces some sound. So it's really, really good fun, and it just shows you a different way of making a Unity experience, right? This is more of an interactive toy than it is necessarily a game. We also do a bit of lighting, as you can see, with that spotlight that's sort of following the disco ball. So for mine, I've made it do scales as it goes up and down. But you can see it's really good fun to play, and they create this tilting mechanic that tilts and then comes back. Sweet. So then next we have Don't Fall Through, which is a multiplayer game. So this is different to the first two that we've done. It's a game again, but this is multiplayer. So we create 2 marbles that compete to get across a disappearing floor. So really good fun. I think we'll encourage some really nice collaboration and have some really fun sort of play testing at the end of a session. So there's the first bit. So if I go here, I think it's oh no. So you can see we're trying to make it across. It's really hard for me to do 2 at once and also concentrate on making sure I'm still talking and not being boring. But have a go with it. It's really, really fun. They should respawn back up, and I'll fix that as soon as I get off of this. But yeah, it's really loads of fun, and they can kind of create whatever path they want through it and challenge their friends. You can even get 4 marbles playing it all at once. Really, really, really fun. Sweet. So then we'll get on to the design projects. So this is where they get to get creative and kind of combine the things that they've seen in the other one. So the first one is called Pixel Art Reveal. They get to make their own pixel art and then roll a disco ball around to reveal it. So this is, again, more of an interactive toy, but also mixed in with some of that like color changing and controlling things, controlling how things look through code. And you can see some examples made by the team down here. We've got a smiley face, pride flag, bumblebee, and then I have a rocket that I made. Which is here. So it's really big, so I'm probably not going to have time to reveal the whole thing to you, but you can have a go at it yourself. So you can see, again, we've got that little spotlight coming around following the disco ball, and then at any point we can just reset and go back to the beginning. So again, we're showing them how to kind of reset their levels as well, a bit of control. Next, we have Track Designer. So this is, again, combining some different things. So this is bringing back those track pieces they had in the very first Rainbow Run project, but we're combining it now with a tilting floor. So we can kind of tilt the floor to roll the marble down, and then try and navigate through some obstacles and spinning things to get to a goal, at which point we'll have sort of fireworks and particle effects and sound that plays. So this one's really, really fun, really combining them, showing them what they can do with what we've shown them. I was saying to Cat Noodle before, I've got all these running on it, so apologies if it's a bit jittery. It's just my RAM holding on for dear life. It's just because I'm running them all in the background. One is no problem. It's just that I've got this and the webinar software running, so please don't take this as Unity will run slow on any computer. This is just a lot. So yeah, really loads of fun, and you can't hear it, but there's sounds coming off of all of these as I hit them, and then there's the kind of goal down there. Which is, yeah, really good fun. And then if I'm not going to fall off, but if I do, it will reset me back to the top. I'll tell you what, we'll just go right onto the playable for the last one, and I'll glance over the slide when I get back. So this is Marble Mayhem. So this is, again, taking everything they've done and trying to make something really big and fun, and either an experience, a game, interactive toy. So this is the one I made as an example, and it was literally designed to just try and get things to bounce as much as physically possible. So all of these things have physics materials on them, and you can see that I can kind of paint the dance floor with the color that's on my marble at the time. And this is all through stuff that we teach the learners how to do in the project. So it's really good fun. And then if I get bored down here, I can click and go back to the top and go again. There you go. I'm going to hopefully bounce off. Yeah. Really loads of fun. You know it's good when I spent ages playing this after I made it. So yeah, Marble Mayhem is going to kind of combine all these skills they've made, all the little modules they've created throughout the projects, and combine them all in a really fun way and something that they'd love to share with their friends and family and other Code Club or CoderDojo members. And yeah, we encourage them to share at this point, as well as we do with all of our paths, so that we can kind of see what the community is built and really engage with everybody else who's enjoying the time using Unity. Cool, so this is just a little visual representation of what I meant when I said we made little like reusable snippets of code, right? So instead of having just a script for each camera in every level and it's individual, we made one for camera rotate, which is that mouse control that you saw in the first project, and one for camera follow, which just means the camera will follow things. So they can take that and drop it into another game, and it will just work for them. So this is teaching them the skills of game development through fun, as we always do, but they can do that, and then they could even take that into another project and it would work exactly the same. So you can see there's lots there, right, like reset and spotlight controller and tilt floor and timer and play sound and all that stuff. Just a little note, as we did on the first one, so this is a bit of a different format. We're sort of trying to progress them a little bit. So the Explore projects are 3 different approaches to marble experiences, right? They're 3 different examples of things you can make with a marble and a physics simulation in Unity. Then in design, we asked them to do a little bit of combination within a more sort of tight brief, right? So we've said to them, you have to make this thing, but you can add any of these elements that you've seen from the other ones. And then invent is, again, allowing them to continue any of the games that they've made. If they want to make a disco dance floor that's even better and bigger, that's great. If they want to continue on their track designer, amazing. If they want to make something new like I did, great. But we're really trying to sort of take some of those like safety wheels off and stuff so they can make their own games. You can look at this in the slides, so I won't read it all to you, but we're recommending probably about 12 weeks for more Unity. We hope that all the projects will be completable within an hour, but it might take up to 1.5 hours for learners that maybe a bit younger and don't have as much experience. But we've designed it for about 12 weeks, which should line up with a term. Yeah, cool. No other questions and comments. Sorry, that was a lot of talking from me, but I hope you enjoyed seeing those. As we said, all those playables will be available to you, so please have some fun playing them and show them to your learners and stuff.
Thanks, Mac. I love that we put you on the spot to make you play those games live, which is added pressure.
It's okay. It's a running thing that in game development, you're never the best person at your own game. So I'm just accepting it at this point, you know.
Yeah, it's part of life.
Absolutely.
We've had a couple of questions. If anyone's got any more questions, pop them into the chat. One person asked, I think it was Rachel, asked where she can find the handout. So it should be linked in the handout section of the GoToWebinar window, but we'll send it around afterwards anyway. So if you find that you can't spot it, don't worry, we will share it with everybody later. And that's got all the playable links that Mac's just been using. We had one question earlier from, oh, I've lost it now. I'll come back to that one. We'll come back to that one. Instead, I'm going to ask Elizabeth's question, which was, how long do you estimate for the intro to Unity path, I suppose? So I guess that would be potentially set up, and then what kind of that initial bit looks like.
Right. Interesting. So the intro to Unity path itself is again at that 10 to 12 weeks. We think it'll be closer to 10 for intro to Unity because it's a bit simpler, it's more scaffolded. They have lots of support. It's not so much creative freedom. The setup itself, once you've done the download for Unity, we'll go into this in a little while. Once you've done the download for Unity, actually getting it set up and creating a project is quite quick. The real time is in getting the download done and signing in to Unity. So I think you could definitely do that within a session easily. But it just depends on the Wi-Fi you have. It might be worth getting them to download it at home if they have their own laptops, or using some better Wi-Fi to download on kind of Club or Dojo laptops. So yeah, I'd say about a session for that, and then maybe 10 for the intro to Unity path itself.
Fabulous. I think this is an easy question from Maureen here. Is this curriculum available? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you go to rpf.io/moreunity or rpf.io/unity, you can get to either the More Unity path on its own, or the Unity one will take you to both paths, and you can see them there. Yeah, they're available to use right now.
Which is very exciting. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I see someone asked a question, Kat, as well, around adding assets.
Yes, that's the one I've been looking for. Thank you.
So if young people want to add assets that they're like creating somewhere else, so they've mentioned Sketchfab or similar platforms. I know we have some young people using Blender, for example, and how they can like integrate that into their Unity projects. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Mac?
Yeah, absolutely. So almost any 3D modeling software will export a file format that Unity can use. I think it's a .obj is the classic 3D model format that Unity uses, but it'll use lots of other things as well. I think you can even do a .stl if I remember correctly. We actually have, I'll show you these at the end, but 2 Blender projects which I think go through the process of getting that into Unity. But anything you can export from a 3D modeling software in a .obj, which is kind of the standard format for those sorts of things, can then just be pulled straight into Unity, and then you can also bring in any sort of colors or textures that you've got along with that model as an image, and then apply it in Unity. So they've tried to make it as easy as possible to bring things across from 3D modeling software. So yeah, it's definitely possible and quite easy.
Fantastic. We've got a couple more questions. Maureen's asked if we could post the link to the projects, which we will do in a second. Actually, Nuala, if you don't mind posting the link to the projects in the chat, we'll sort that out. And then Andy asked, which Unity version should we install?
I would just install the latest LTS, which is long-term service edition. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but all the projects are designed to work on any Unity 2021 and up. We haven't used anything that's like a specific new fancy feature or anything like that. They should all just work on any version 2021 and afterwards. But if you get the long-term, so Unity release new versions like really regularly, so you'll get prompted quite a lot to download a new version. Unless you're developing those top-end games, there's really no need to be constantly updating. They'll let you know if it's like a security issue or anything, but I've never seen that sort of stuff pop up. But yeah, so the LTS version, which you can see really clearly indicated on the download page, is going to be perfect.
Fabulous. And then a question from Danny, which was, you said about 12 weeks for the kind of whole pathway. What are you assuming a session is with that? Are you thinking about a 1 hour-ish session, Mac?
That's 12 1-hour. That's 12 1-hour sessions. Yeah. So if you do a dojo which runs a bit longer, obviously you can divide that by however many hours you've got in there.
Brilliant. I think that's all the questions for now. We'll come back to the last questions at the end. So if you've got one,
yeah, no worries. Hopefully I'll cover off. Yeah, hopefully I'll cover off some of them, because I'm going to go into the common challenges now. So hopefully this will be sort of answering some of those questions as we go. Cool. Sorry, I just need to wait for my keyboard to wake up again.
It's late in the day, so.
Yeah, it seems like ready to sleep. Yeah, sweet. So I'm just going to go through some sort of categories of common challenges with Unity, and then if you have anything that I don't touch on here, please put in the questions. So one of the biggest hurdles I think for Unity is actually installing it. So the editor itself is a 4 GB download, and that also we have to get the WebGL build support and the documentation. So this can take a little while depending on obviously the speed of your internet. So yeah, just be prepared for that. And as I say, if they've got their own computers, I recommend they download it at home. And if you've got sort of Dojo computers, if you can take them somewhere to get better internet, that's great. If not, just prepare for it to take a little while. The other sort of hurdle here is that in order to download it, you need a Unity account. So the Unity account itself is only for people, I believe, is stated in the terms of service is supposed to be for 18 and above. They obviously push this for education, and so their solution to that is having you can get as many free Unity licenses as you need on a single email. The license is kind of assigned to the computer and then is registered via an email. So my recommendation is that if you have a CoderDojo email address or if you have a school email address, to use that and sign into the computers for the kids. All the projects are saved locally, and so you can transfer them between just on a USB stick. And they will be able to open them on any computer. But yeah, it's a little bit of a faff, especially if you've got lots of people wanting you to sign in. But parents are also welcome to sort of sign up for an account for them, for their children as well. But yeah, that's one hurdle. There is methods to install it through the command line and stuff and register a license. So you can have a look at that on the Unity website, but that is a bit, it's quite complicated. So I'd say just having a sort of central Unity account and then logging in on any laptops you need to. Yeah, as I said, there's new editor releases all the time, so please just ignore those messages unless it says something like, fixing game breaking thing. But just getting the latest LTF version is perfect. LTS, sorry. And you also need to install an external code editor. So Unity itself will try and prompt you to get Visual Studio. We recommend Visual Studio Code, which is a bit more lightweight, and you can then sort of set up within Unity to use Visual Studio Code. Whenever you click to open a script, it will just automatically do it. And that's a one-time setup, and then it will do that forever for you. But we're just in the process. We're actually, I think, tomorrow going to update our Getting Started guide to make sure that's in there. So yeah, check back and that will, all those instructions will be there for you. Next, using the editor itself. So some common challenges. It's definitely easier with a mouse than it is with the trackpad. That's not to say it's impossible, but a lot of the controls like clicking in the center mouse wheel, dragging around are just made so much easier if you have an external mouse. So if that's possible, I would definitely recommend it. It doesn't mean it's impossible to use a trackpad. It'll just make life a lot easier. You can drag any of these windows around, and so if you have a learner that does that, you can reset it by going to layouts, reset all layouts. Again, you'll get these slides, so don't feel like you have to memorize this right now. And yeah, there's many different parts of the editor. As you can see, it can be a bit overwhelming. So it's just about directing them to which part they need to be looking at any particular time. For the most part, you only ever need to use the sort of hierarchy on the left-hand side, the scene view, and then the inspector, unless you're dragging things in from your assets. So it's usually just the top half that you're looking at. The other thing is that because you're moving things in 3D on a 2D screen, that can cause some issues. So you can only ever really see it in 2 dimensions at once. So I'd recommend using that. You can see this little perspective tool up here. I'd recommend using that to sort of switch which view, and that will allow you to place your objects more precisely. So if something's not working, just check. You can go on the top, right, back, like bottom and stuff like that, just to see exactly where it is. So that can cause some confusion. And also, if you try to put something on top, say you have like a box and you want to put your marble on top of it, if that marble is not above the box, if it's even clipping it a little bit, it will just fall through because the thing that monitors collision is on the outside. So if stuff keeps falling through, just try sort of moving up a little bit. That's another thing we found. Yeah, oh, sorry, I went too far. So debugging, we kind of covered a little bit of this earlier, but I'll just go over it again. So not all errors in Unity need to be fixed. So you can see I've got these yellow exclamation marks on the top. This stuff, it just is a warning. The game will still run. Sometimes these things will happen just because you've had in the startup, like some graphics thing hasn't loaded, and it's not going to cause you an issue, but that yellow check mark will still be there. You can just click clear, and most of the time those will just go away. But if you see these sort of red exclamation points, those ones have to be fixed, and it won't let you play the game. It will say you need to fix these. My biggest piece of advice is that Unity errors tend to stack up. So usually what happens is it'll find the first error and then it doesn't stop there. It's not like Python where it'll just stop the first time it hits an error. It will keep going and it will just spit out all the errors that have come. But usually a lot of those are caused by that very first thing, right? You haven't named it, you've used the wrong variable name, or you haven't included your bracket, as I say, and then everything else is sort of messed up. So just deal with the top error first, and then usually you'll find that lots of the other ones just disappear with it because they're all sort of caused by that. Yeah, and there's a capitalization is super important in Unity. So there's two versions of game object, lowercase and uppercase, and they both are correct, but in different instances, right? So it's just about checking the code really carefully for capitalization, particularly around Unity keywords like game object or anything you're using in there. Variables, as long as they're consistent, it doesn't matter. But yeah, for Unity methods and modules and stuff, make sure you're checking your capitalization. Time, guys, I'll not do that. Yeah, so the last little bit really is about organization. So the sort of project window, which is where all your assets are stored, can get cluttered really fast. So we didn't really touch on this too much in Intro to Unity because we just wanted them to be not too worried about that bit and instead focusing on getting used to the top bits, like the scene editor and the hierarchy. But in more Unity, I've really impressed the point that organizing your files is really, really important. There is a search box. So if you've used meaningful file names, it should be easy enough to find things depending on where, if they've accidentally been put in a folder or something like that. And also, if you're going to copy and paste a script, because it's C#, it's really important that if you change the name of a script, you also open that script and change the name of the class, because they have to be the same, otherwise you will get an error. This will only happen for people that are really kind of going off and making their own thing, but it's just something to be aware of. It works slightly differently to Python in that way. Yeah, so this is just some tips, like when it comes to design projects, we're asking them to come up with like this whole game. So lots of kids will probably say something along the lines of like, I want to make Fortnite, which is great, and like absolutely they will be able to make Fortnite with years and putting the dedication in. It's not saying they can't, but within the scope of this, it's probably a bit much. And the point of this is for them to get comfortable. So I think as a facilitator, you're going to do a lot of sort of managing expectations and seeing like what's an achievable thing and really hyping that up and getting them excited, because making anything is amazing, right? And they'll get to that Fortnite level stuff later. But that will be the reference point, right? They'll have Among Us or Fortnite or something in their head. So yeah, just a little bit of managing expectations, and also just like letting them have some time to think about it, come back with an idea for your design, or putting stuff up on a shared board so that you can all kind of ideate together. Yeah, and if you have to have two screens, which I know like not a lot of venues will, that is great. But you can also just use it in one. Just be aware there'll be some window switching to get to the project. If they have a mobile device, having the project on mobile device is a great way to kind of combat that. Yeah, and then as you see with lots of these projects, there's lots of like playing them and showing them off to people. So make sure you make time for that within your sessions, because that's a really important sort of validating moment. And yeah, there's like we saw some, I think, when they get to the end of these projects, we saw some entries to coolest projects this year, which were Unity games that they had obviously extended from when they'd done Intro to Unity. So I'd love to see more of that. So if people spend the time and are making these amazing things, like, you can absolutely submit them to coolest projects, and we'd love to see them. We're really, really excited to see some sort of star collectors and Intro to Unity projects this year. Yeah, cool. That Excellent. Is the presentation. So yeah, any other questions? Anything I didn't cover that you were really
Thanks, Mac. That was brilliant. And great coolest projects link. Absolutely true. If people are making stuff, we always love to see it. There was a really interesting question from Nefertiti that I thought we should touch on, which was, if a ninja or a person attending a code club misses a session, will they be lost? And I guess how can you support somebody to work through these paths and not get lost if they are missing sessions here and there, as happens?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it really depends on obviously at what stage you're at. If you're doing this all together, leading from the front, everybody on the same stage, there will be a bit behind in the project, but there's lots of, so particularly in more Unity, there's lots of ways that you can go, like, right, you've done Disco Dance Floor and you've done Rainbow Run, we're going to start on pixel art reveal, which is really possible having done Disco Dance Floor. And then if you want, you could pick up the when everybody's onto their event and we're giving them lots of time, they can pick up the Explore project that they missed. The projects, as always, are written with the learner in mind. So the idea is that they should be able to sort of read and get through it themselves with just a little bit of help from the facilitator. So we have, like, this is a conscious thing, as you know, with all of our projects, making sure that they're able to, you know, we're giving some sort of self-reliance to the learner so that they can read through it. So it's completely possible as well that you get them to just go, right, you're doing that project that you've missed, and we're going to go on to this one, and then they will just need a little bit of pointing in the right direction. And if anything, they'll hear what's going on and get excited about doing that next project.
A bit of flexibility, and we should be okay.
Exactly. I don't think it's not going to be the case that missing one session means you have no idea what's going on anymore. It will just be a little bit of flexibility on your part, but I'm sure you can do it.
And a benefit of the projects always being free and available online is if a young person wants to do some of the coding themselves at home, like, they're step by step, so they will guide them through it, and then they can come to you with any queries at the next session as well.
Fingers crossed for that browser-based version of it. I can't honestly. If I could have one wish, that would be the thing.
Hopefully. I don't think we have any more questions. If anyone has any last ones, we'll pause briefly here in case anyone wants to drop any last bits in the chat. I did see we have some people setting up as we speak, which is brilliant, in live time.
Love that.
Which is great.
Yeah, great to see. I seen Garage was saying it was a simple enough process to get set up and running, and a lot of people excited to get started. So Maureen and Amy are sharing how they're very excited to get started with Unity as well. So great to hear.
Great. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. I think it's, you know, it's truly an amazing piece of software. As I said, it's very close to my heart. I did my uni degree in it. And I just think it's, you know, seeing it being used to make Pokemon Go and Among Us and all these amazing games, and you getting to use it yourself, I think is just, is so magical, isn't it? You know, you can really you can go from beginner to some absolutely incredible things, and that's all within this one piece of software.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth just said, Unity sounds perfect for my students who are now 13 to 14 years old and have completed Scratch and Python pathways. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. Perfect. That's exactly the people that I would be pointing towards Unity for the next challenge.
Brilliant. We had another question about, I guess, levels or age. I think Maureen teaches high school, and again, I mean, you sort of touched on this earlier, didn't you, Mac, that it's more towards the sort of top end of the Code Club age and sort of 11 pluses, although there is a bit of flexibility in that.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, was there anything else you wanted to share on that, Mac, while we're touching on that?
No, I don't think so. I think, like I say, it's really about, like, how confident you think these students are. If they're struggling to do typing, if they're, you know, oh, I've just had I don't know what happened there, but I just had a success noise in my ear as soon as I started talking. I think one of the games was still playing. Yeah, so it's all about that, like, comfort with typing, with file management. So I don't, you know, I don't want to put a hard and fast age on it, but I think, you know, 11 plus is a generally good range to be thinking about it. But if you're unsure, I'd get them to maybe have a go at a Python first to see how if they smash that, you know, get through it, then I think they're absolutely fine. So yeah, play it by ear. They're all designed for beginners. Like, there's nobody's going to get on and have this terrible experience where they don't know what's happening. It's just about you sort of understanding the level of comfort learners have with using a computer, really. And like I said, just think about it like Photoshop. If I just gave them a simple task in Photoshop, would they be absolutely overwhelmed, or would they be able to kind of figure it out with the project guiding them? And I think that's a good comparison.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mac. I think we also had a question. Garrett asked, can you explain more about sharing licenses, and does it mean that a dojo can have one license that gets shared amongst the ninjas, or I guess would you have individual licenses?
So Unity free licenses are not, so they're attached to a computer, not to a user. So you log in and then you activate a license on a computer, and you can have as many of those, as far as I'm aware, you can have as many of those free licenses on your account as you need. Particularly for education, they're really keen on that. So yeah, it's not just one license. Instead, you have a free license on each laptop you sign into. and you can have as many of those on your account. So when you sign in, it'll say, do you want to activate a free license or do you want to get the pro version? And you just click activate on that free license, and that's one more on your account.
Brilliant. This question is above my knowledge level, but Dave
Cool,
asks,
no worries.
will you be making a separate course using Unity or Adobe Aero for AR? I don't know what those are. Please tell me more if you know, Mac.
We don't know. So I'll tell you what, actually, let me go, because I've just realized this isn't the end. I've got a little bit more.
Ooh,
I confused
fantastic.
myself. Let me give me 2 minutes and I'll go through this end bit, and hopefully this will answer your question.
That's brilliant. Let's do that.
Yeah, cool. I got confused by the question slide. So following these two paths, we've got introduction to Unity, we're picking up some of those threads and more Unity. And the idea with more Unity is that we've now prepped learners to go onto the Unity Learn platform. So Unity are aware that they're making a professional level piece of software, but they want to encourage beginners to get into it, which is why you can get a free license and just use it, right? But the problem is that those Learn resources are often aimed at like upper level high school, college, and university students who are just sort of getting into that. So they're quite a high level for a beginner to just go right into. So the point of these two paths was to prepare learners for Unity Learn. And Unity Learn is a great platform. And like one of my favorite things about Unity is both their learning resources and also the community is really, really active and really amazing, so they can help learners. So inside of learn.unity.com, you can get all of these courses. So there's mobile AR development, there's VR development, junior programmer, Unity essentials. And so these are great next steps if people finish more Unity and think, oh, I want to do more. And I think that will sort of go on to the AR stuff. If I'm honest, what was the name of the AR tool?
I believe it was Adobe Aero was the other AR tool.
Adobe Aero. At the moment, now that we've completed these, there's no current plans to make any more Unity pathways for the time being. As we say, we've got our sort of fingers crossed for some browser-based version, which means maybe we could do a bit more later, but we want to really just prepare people for these Unity Learn resources, and then they should be able to kind of go off and collaborate and make their own games. So I haven't heard of Adobe Aero. I'm going to look it up as soon as I get off this, but I think all of this stuff will really prepare them to kind of integrate those external tools about what they are.
Brilliant.
And then the last little thing to mention before we log off, and I'm running low on time, is we've got 2 Blender projects, which are a good sort of inroad for anybody who's into 3D modeling already. You can create your own marble texture and your own marble to use in all of these projects. And you can also create your own tiled floor, which you will see in those examples. And again, we can kind of export it and import it into Unity. And then that is the last, that's the last question slide I'm at now.
Thanks so much, Mac. That was a very comprehensive overview, and that was really helpful actually at the end. That linked really nicely. It's as though you planned it just to talk about.
I know, right? Yeah, maybe I did.
I think we have one last question. We maybe have time for one or two last very final questions. So we have one from Rachel, which was, I have 2 classes and I want to do this course, but they are in the IT suite. So does this mean they will not have separate accounts as they'll be sharing a PC? And do I get around this by creating different project names?
Yes, I would get around that by creating separate project names. So as far as like getting them, obviously, if you're in a PC suite, particularly if it's networked, you'll have to get the administrator to kind of put Unity on there. If I'm honest, I'm not 100% sure how that works, but Unity are, as I say, really good documentation, so I'm sure they have something on there to explain it. But yeah, I think different project names would be great, and then saving it in the Unity has like a cloud service that you can save your games and stuff into. So maybe if it was a network PC, rather than saving it locally and risking it sort of disappearing, you could save it in the cloud service, or if students obviously have like a specific drive that is permanent, then they can save the project there and just import it into any instance of Unity.
Yeah.
So there are ways to navigate it.
Yeah, great solution. Thanks, Mac.
No worries.
I think that's it for questions, and we're out of time anyway, so I think I'll hand over to you to wrap things up.
Perfect. Mac, do you mind popping it over to the very last slide?
There we go.
Great. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined us today for all your questions. Also a big shout out to Mac, who did a great job sharing all that very detailed information on all the different projects, and it was really helpful. And I see a lot of people are very excited to get started with Unity and try out those more Unity projects as well. And also thank you to Kat for answering lots of questions coming in throughout. And if you do have any other queries, you can always email us at our info and support email inboxes. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.